Hi guys, Chess Learning for Life here, back with another video. So today I would like to take you through my first ever standard tournament game. So it was a classical time control with 75 minutes with plus 30 seconds increment every move. And it was really my first time playing this kind of setting, and just a very long game, deep thinking. I hope I get used to it. So here's my first game. I'm playing with white. I started off with the Queen's Gambit. He replied with the declined. This is all theory. And here, taking on d5 is also theory. This is just to simplify things and just make a clear decision about the position. And here there's two moves. One is taken with the e-pawn, which gives him the queenside majority, and therefore my plan would be minority attack on the queen side. And here he decides to take with the knight, which is also an option to clarify the position. And here it also forces trades, which benefits black because black is always looking to equalize the position. Here I took once, and I should have took twice, and then set up a minority attack. Took twice, bishop d3, and if c5 I can just take him, play against this Isolani on d5. And if he goes something like knight f6, I can just castle, bishop g4, h3. Maybe here h3 is better to kind of control his bishop, and his bishop actually just has no good diagonal to go. Maybe something like knight e4 and then bishop f5. But then I can go rook c1 for c6. I can even take here because this knight is very strong, but I can also just set up a minority attack with a3 b4. And just minority attack, I'm going to explain briefly. It's basically you want to push your minority, clash into the c pawn, and make this pawn a backward pawn. Like, if this pawn can push, then obviously the minority attack doesn't work. But if you take, then you can still create a weakness of an Isolani d-pawn, isolated d-pawn. But if you clash into him, if he takes and you take, then you can create this isolated d-pawn as a weakness. If he doesn't take, which is the better option, you take him and leave a backward pawn on c6. So this is the minority attack, but we're going too far here. I made a slight inaccuracy. Even rook c1 was better. Yeah, rook c1 was the theoretical move, but bishop e2 was a slight inaccuracy, and he kind of, I mean, this is not that bad. It's a strong center, but just these pawns could prove to be a weakness later. Here's c5, a good educational move to kind of break the center apart, but this is very rock solid. I don't have to worry about it, so just keeping attention is fine. I don't have to take, I don't have to push, so just castle. Here knight f6 was kind of slow. b6, bishop b7, opening this diagonal was better. So one tip for Queen's Gambit players is that if you see a pawn on d5 that is like fixed there, like there's no c pawn pushes that can affect it, if there's a d pawn that's fixed there, then the bishop belongs on d3. But if there is no d pawn fixed here, then the bishop belongs to e2. Why? Because after fianchettoing the bishop, your queen can be active, and you don't have to worry about bishop takes knight because you can take out the bishop. Because if you have your bishop on d3, then you need to take with the pawn, and sometimes it's fine, but sometimes you could get demolished, like with the queen and the knight, and maybe with some rook lifts. But like, this is just a slight tip for Queen's Gambit players. Here, activating my queen and b6, trying to develop his bishop. I immediately a4. Like, this is just my natural reaction. Is like, whenever I see this structure, I just go a4, a5, try to open up my rook, damage his structure. Here, this bishop move is kind of useless. I just slide my queen away. But here, rook fb8 was a very good reply. And here, I was considering maybe queen a3 and then knight d7 and not trading the rooks. But here I was just scared of this takes, and this bishop is very strong controlling this diagonal, so my rook can't go here. But this kind of transposes into the position in the game after knight d2 and the bishop moves. But here I just went for a simplification of immediately taking on b6. Here another move may be knight d2, which also kind of transposes into the position in the game, which is takes, queen a3. Oops, sorry. I'm using a touchpad. And this pins this pawn to this queen, and this proved to be a very useful pin. Now he temporarily controls the b file, but he has to drop his knight back to protect his pawn. But actually here, the engine is saying you can actually take the knight and play rook c8, which is just crazy. Look at this. Takes. And then, what? And then just playing down a pawn and saying that it's same side and there's no outside pass pawn. After maybe, no, you can't take. I mean, you can take, and yeah, 5v4, same side, knight versus bishop. Knight is better with the same side. But this engine line is just kind of crazy. Therefore, knight d7 is a very human move. And here, this bishop was very make my position very awkward because I can't bring my other rook into the game. So I kicked it back and bring my other rook into the game. But here actually there was a stronger move, that was knight c4. Knight c4, I was looking at rook b5, knight a5, and oh, like this. So knight here, I think I was looking at rook b7, so knight a5, so rook back, and there is still knight a5. After bishop e4, you can go f3 and c4 right here, just trapping this bishop, and voila. I mean, here your position just my position just dominates. But here I missed this knight c4. I think I was considering it, but I think my visualization skills need to improve, because I couldn't calculate that far. I just went for this rook maneuver. Here I don't understand g6. Maybe he's trying to make love for his king, but if he is making love for his king, maybe h6 is better to kind of compensate with his bishop, because g6 really just places everything on the light square, and in the end game it's pretty bad for his own bishop. And here I just think his bishop was too strong in this diagonal, and I was also worried about these future queen g5 ideas, so I just traded off. And after rook a b8, I think the right way to play this is to play with your outside pass pawn and just ignore this tension right here. And even just rook a7 doesn't really do anything. You can just unpin yourself. But here he went for the wrong continuation and I infiltrated. And here I don't understand queen c6. Queen c6 was very unnecessary. Just an e5 break would have just done the job to pass the move to me and created more tension right here. And trying to open up this file to make back rank threats. But queen c6 was just a horrible blunder. I spotted knight e5, but here I kind of slipped and played h3. So why was h3 wrong? So you can see here if knight takes knight, then I take the rook and then take the knight. And here if he just goes queen b5, I had to be beware of this queen b1 check, and I cannot take this knight because my rook hangs. I cannot take the knight like this because then I blunder my back rank. And so here I really had to solve my back rank problems, but h3 was just not it. h3 allows rook d8, and then there was still queen c7, which should have won. But the cleanest was just rook a1, relieving the pressure of the rook and freeing up your queen to capture these pieces. And after rook d8, there is just queen c7. Your rook is overloaded, you can't protect your rook and the knight at the same time, and just something is lost. But with h3, I allowed a check, and a check allowed him to take this knight. As you could see, now here even queen c7 was still better, because after rook f8, takes here, takes, and there's d takes c5, and here I'm up a pawn in the queen endgame, and I have more winning chances. But here I blundered c4. I thought I was winning, but then he had a check, so I couldn't take his knight, and and then he took and centralized his queen. Now I blundered into an equal endgame. I took. He should have taken on c4. If he taken on, wait, no, you can't take on c4. My bad. The rook is hanging. Your rook should have protected the pawn, because this pawn is really important. Because after this f4 and this pawn falls, then I have a passed c pawn, and now you really have to struggle defending it. Here he was in time trouble, and he tried to go for back rank ideas, but my king had g3 and your king does not. That's why I said g6. Why g6 when you have h6, right? Playing h6 is just much more safer. And here he could have even held with rook f8 and just became passive and used back rank defense against my passed pawn, but here he just gave up. And even here king e7 had to force me to find a series of checks right here. And even queen f8, very hidden, and I still had to figure out my attack, but eventually I could win his queen. Oops, my bad. But here he just gave up, and yeah. That's my first game and my first win of my classical journey, I guess. So there are more videos, game reviews of my tournament games that would be uploaded. Stay tuned. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe to check out more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.